Well, hello, friends, and welcome once again. It is Tom Swiss here with some Zen pagan commentary. It has been a minute since we last got together over video chat in this format, though if you've been following me on the Facebook, you may have seen all the online Qigong classes and meditations and the concerts I've been doing and the karate classes, of course, everything like that. Yeah, we haven't gotten together here. We have not gotten together here on video to talk about something that I've talked about on the blog, and that's what we're going to do today. We're going to talk. Well, there's no way around it. We got to talk about police violence for a moment. Now, if you have read my stuff, if you've been following me, you know that for many years I have been a critic of American police and American criminal justice. I was on the abolish the police thing back at least in 2016. You'll find a post on the Zen Pagan entitled "Is It Time to Abolish the Police?" which I wrote based on some comments that came out of the court case around the killing of Freddie Gray. Um, but let me pause on that for a moment because if you're a regular reader, regular viewer, you probably are familiar with Discordianism. Now, for those who came in late, let me explain. Discordianism is a spoof or parody religion that was originated in the 1950s here in the United States by, well, a couple of beer drunk teenagers, to be honest. It was kind of their own secret club. Is really how it started. You know, as boys will do. I've seen the early editions of the Principia Discordia. That's what it reads like. It's like, hey, this is our ancient secret society that we just made up, and ha ha ha, isn't this funny? But as the center of that, it was very interesting. They chose the idea of chaos. They chose the goddess Eris Discordia. It's very interesting for a couple of guys in the 1950s to pick a goddess as kind of their central theme. They organized this around, and they kind of became in one sense, became a performance art group, but in another sense, really became a very interesting religious trend and magical trend because they asserted that chaos has a creativity behind it. That we rather than seeing order as creative and chaos as destructive, we should see that both order and chaos have their creative and destructive sides. So you kind of get a nice little, four-section chart there. God is a crazy woman named Eris. After all, somebody had to put all this chaos here. Kind of the fundamental statement of Discordianism. And I would say that by accepting the role of chaos in just a few decades, Discordianism has proved itself to be the most true of all of the one true religions. Its principal holy text is the Principia Discordia, which was mostly written by a fellow named Gregory Hill under the nom de plume Apocalypse the Younger, along with Carrie Thornley, who went by the name Lord Omar Khayyam Ravenhurst. Thornley had a very interesting history that he, after this, joined the Marines, served in the same unit as Lee Harvey Oswald, actually became kind of not friends, but service buddies. Like they were two weirdos in their own way, two malcontents in the Marine Corps, and so they would talk sometimes. And Thornley was kind of fascinated by this guy Oswald he met, wrote a novel inspired by Oswald before Oswald assassinated Kennedy, and so Thornley got sucked deep into the weirdness vortex around the Kennedy assassination. At one point, he actually believed that he had been brainwashed into being a second Oswald in the assassination of Kennedy. It's a very strange story. But the Principia Discordia spread through 1960s counterculture as one of the early experiments in copyleft. It says right on it there, it says, all rights reversed, reprint what you like. So before the GPL, before the BSD software licenses, before the Creative Commons, Principia Discordia was out there, and it inspired Robert Anton Wilson and Robert Shea's psychedelic science fiction classic, the Illuminatus trilogy. Thornley is also credited by Margot Adler in Drawing Down the Moon as being one of the first to use the word pagan in the neo-pagan sense, though Thornley later downplayed that connection. Now, there's one line from the Principia Discordia that is the key text for what I would like to talk about here. And Among its marginalia scribblings and everything in there's one very interesting line. And behold, thusly was the law formulated. Imposition of order equals escalation of disorder. Imposition of order equals escalation of disorder. Thornley later gave a name to this. He called it the law of eristic escalation. And he also commented that Fenderson's amendment adds that the tighter the order in question is maintained, the longer the consequent chaos takes to escalate, but the more it does when it does. Armed with the law of eristic escalation and Fenderson's amendment, any imbecile, not just a sociologist, can understand politics. Possibly relevant to the moment in which we find ourselves. I don't know if George Lucas had ever heard of this, but you might be familiar with the form of the law that Princess Leia spoke to Grand Moff Tarkin in the first Star Wars movie. The more you tighten your grip, the more star systems will slip through your fingers. Okay. So this provides a useful light, I think, to consider the escalation of chaos in these present times, how cities across the United States are finding that after years of tightening their grip with more and more oppressive and repressive policing tactics, the hearts and minds of citizens are slipping through their fingers. The order that has prevailed in the past few decades has been maintained only because somehow, and I do not understand how, but we're going to come to an idea about that in a few moments here. This order has prevailed only because most citizens somehow managed to keep themselves under a tremendous illusion. The illusion that our policing and our criminal justice systems were fundamentally fair. Yes, the system works. There are a few exceptions. There are occasional abuses. There's occasionally injustice happens by accident. But by and large, the system is fair. And, before we had video cameras in everybody's pocket, and before we had social media to spread the footage around, like we've seen these past weeks, hundreds of incidents of unquestionable police brutality caught on camera. Another one just within the past 24 hours where a man was shot in the back while running away from police in Atlanta. Caught on film. So before we had all this, and even for a while after we had it, people would just not look at the footage. I don't. Well, we'll come to that in a moment. So until recently, people could maintain this delusion. So to use a metaphor from the Illuminatus trilogy, they could not see the Fnords. They could not see the Fnords. They could not see the what? You could not see the what? I didn't hear you say anything after that. So in this novel, the Illuminatus trilogy, the idea is that citizens are hypnotically conditioned from childhood to be unable to consciously see or probably hear the word Fnord. And if suddenly hear silence as I'm speaking here, perhaps you, my friends, have been conditioned. But if you can hear me when I say the word Fnord, then you have broken your conditioning and there is hope for you. So listen carefully. All right. So this word Fnord is then liberally sprinkled into the newspapers, the magazines, all the news. And because it's there, but you're not allowed to see it, it creates this constant, low-grade, irrational, unidentifiable unease when one reads the news, except that the word Fnord is not found in the advertisements. So consumerism provides a relief from this constant, low-level, churning fear. So there's a quote from Illuminatus here. So one of our story's heroes breaks his conditioning. He sees the Fnords. It's a little bit like that movie. Is it Them? Roddy Piper. Where he puts the glasses on and he can see, the billboards that say "Obey," and he sees the people with the gold faces and everything. Kind of like that. So this is a bit from Illuminatus, where our hero, one of our heroes, has broken his conditioning and sees what's going on. Of course, the essence of control is fear. The Fnords produced a whole population walking around in chronic low-grade emergency, tormented by ulcers, dizzy spells, nightmares, heart palpitations, and all the other symptoms of too much adrenaline. All my left-wing arrogance and contempt for my countrymen melted, and I felt genuine pity No wonder the poor bastards believe anything they're told. Walk through pollution and overcrowding without complaining. Watch their sons hauled off to endless wars and butchered. Never protest, never fight back, never show much happiness or eroticism or curiosity or normal human emotion. Live with perpetual tunnel vision. Walk past a slum without seeing either the human misery it contains or the potential threat it poses to their security. Then I got a hunch and turned quickly to the advertisements. It was as I expected. No Fnords. That was part of the gimmick, too. Only in consumption, endless consumption, could they escape the amorphous threat of the invisible Fnords. Now, in real life, of course, the Fnords are not a single word. They are all the cliche phrases, all the stock tropes that obscure the truth without actually lying. They're whatever the black magic is that has led to Americans seeing accounts of police violence, all these other crimes of the state, these war crimes, for decades. This has been there in plain sight, and yet somehow people have not seen it. It has landed on people's eyeballs, it has landed in people's ears, and somehow not penetrated. There is some black magic at work, if that is the case, and that makes that the case, rather. It is the case. Indubitably, it is the case. All this stuff has been in the news for a long time, and somehow I can't see anything. I can't see. Right here in Baltimore County, just a few days before George Floyd was killed, we had a man, an innocent black man, killed by the police. Robert Johnson Jr. was shot by Baltimore County police. He was stopped. There was some kind of dispute. The cops were called. It was just like a noise complaint. It was something very, very minor. Well, he had a gun, and he dropped the gun on the ground as he got out of the car. You've got a gun. You go, hey, I'm just going to put this on the ground. Gets out with his hands up. The cops shot him. Not only did they shoot him, they shot past him, shot into a house, and hit another innocent person, shooting them in the leg. Mr. Johnson was killed. The other person survived, was only wounded. Okay. Now this story was in the local news. That's how I saw it. Right. I saw it. It made an impression on me. Wow. I shared the story on Facebook. But I talk about this with some of my friends. Good white liberals who care and now are like, Black Lives Matter, and all upset about the killing of George Floyd. And I mentioned this incident, which happened just a few days before the killing of George Floyd, and they're shocked. They somehow it did not penetrate. The Fnords kept it from penetrating into their brain. Is the only way that I can explain this. There is some dark magic at work that has prevented them from seeing this. But now with all the video, all the incidents, the incredible video of the killing of George Floyd that just goes on and 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 keeps going with that cop's knee in that man's neck. Such a horror that it breaks through the Fnords. The Fnords are now in large print, circled in blood red, and even heavily conditioned citizens are finding impossible to reconcile what they see in these viral videos of cop violence with what they have been told about their country. People have seen the Fnords, the lies are obvious, and citizens' conditioning is falling apart. It's not just radical goofball bloggers who nobody reads who are calling for the admiralty of police now. Perfectly nice suburban moms and dads are talking about alternatives to putting a group of armed bureaucrats above the law in order to enforce the law. Maybe there's some other ways. Maybe there's some other things we could do about this, Karen. I don't know. Maybe so, Joe. So the imposed order, the order that was imposed, is falling apart, and we are due, as the law of Eristic escalation tells us, we are due for a time of chaos. So to prepare yourselves spiritually for this, my friend, I suggest getting to know Our Lady Eris. I will put a link in here to an introduction to the literature of Discordianism that I did at Starwood a couple years ago. I have the notes for it. I'm going to try to find the video and post that too. I haven't been able to dig that up yet, but for those of you who prefer the video, we'll try to find that here. So You might be wondering, Tom, are you saying that a spoof religion made up by a couple of teenagers who hung out in bowling alleys drinking beer in the 1950s. Are you saying that this spoof religion is the best way to understand these confusing and violent times? Is that what you are saying? Yes, that is what I'm saying. Friends, don't let your heart get so heavy that you cannot see the humor in tragedy. But don't let your heart get so frivolous that you cannot see the tragedy in humor. So I'm going to leave you with another quote from the Illuminatus trilogy. It's not true unless it makes you laugh, but you don't understand it until it makes you weep. Kalisti for the prettiest one. I should mention that I actually set out to write a little piece about the law of aristic escalation back in March when the world was only being disrupted by the COVID-19 pandemic, and I suffered a disc crash. So I guess Our Lady Eris wanted me to wait to talk about this until the shit really hit the fan. Hail Eris, all hail Discordia. So thank you for your kind attention, my friends, and we'll see you next time.